Chapter 1. The Girl in the Rain. The storm came without warning, the kind that turned the forest road into a river of mud and made visibility nearly impossible. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white as the windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour. She shouldn't have taken this route, the scenic byway through Blackthorn Forest that her GPS had suggested as a shortcut. But after 3 days of driving away from everything she'd ever known, what was one more mistake? The engine sputtered. Once. Twice. No, Sarah pleaded, pumping the gas pedal. Please don't do this to me. The car rolled to a stop in the middle of the road, rain hammering the roof like angry fists. Sarah dropped her forehead against the steering wheel and felt the hot sting of tears mixing with the cold dread in her chest. Of course this would happen. Of course the universe would find one more way to punish her for running. She'd left Chicago with nothing but her savings, a duffel bag, and the clothes on her back. Left behind her controlling ex-fiancé Marcus, the nonprofit job that had slowly crushed her spirit, and the life everyone expected her to live. She was supposed to be starting over in Portland, reinventing herself, finding peace. Instead, she was stranded in the middle of nowhere with a dead phone charger and approximately 0 survival skills. Sarah grabbed her jacket and pushed open the door, immediately regretting it as rain soaked through her clothes in seconds. She stumbled toward the hood, squinting through the storm. Maybe it was something simple. Maybe she could... A howl split the night, not the distant, lonely sound of a dog. This was primal. Close. The kind of sound that triggered something ancient in the human brain, something that whispered, predator. Sarah's breath caught. She turned slowly, scanning the tree line barely visible through the sheets of rain. Lightning flashed, illuminating the forest for a brief, terrible moment. Yellow eyes stared back at her from between the trees. She ran. Pure instinct drove her into the forest, away from the road, away from whatever was watching her. Branches tore at her face and clothes. Her sneakers slipped on wet leaves and exposed roots. Behind her, she heard crashing through the underbrush. Heavy, fast, getting closer. Sarah's lungs burned. A root caught her foot, and she went down hard, rolling through mud and pine needles. She scrambled onto her hands and knees, heart thundering so loud it drowned out even the storm. The creature emerged from the darkness. It was massive, far too large to be a natural wolf. Its fur was so dark it seemed to absorb the light, and those eyes. They held an intelligence that made Sarah's blood run cold. The wolf moved with predatory grace, circling her slowly. She could see its muscles rippling beneath its coat, could hear the low rumble in its chest. Please, Sarah whispered, hating how her voice shook. Please, The wolf lunged. Sarah threw her arms up instinctively, squeezing her eyes shut against what was coming. But the attack never landed. Instead, a tremendous crash echoed through the forest as another shape, larger, more powerful, collided with the first wolf mid-leap. They went rolling across the forest floor in a tangle of fur and teeth and snarls that sounded like thunder. Sarah crawled backward, unable to look away from the violent dance of shadows and lightning. The new wolf was bigger, its coat a storm gray that seemed to shimmer even in the darkness. It moved with brutal efficiency, forcing the black wolf back with snaps of its powerful jaws. The black wolf retreated suddenly, melting back into the forest with one last resentful snarl. Sarah's rescuer turned to face her. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. The gray wolf was enormous, easily the size of a small bear. Rain ran in rivulets down its muzzle and its eyes. God, its eyes were different. Not the predatory yellow of the first wolf, but a deep, startling amber that seemed to look directly into her soul. Something in Sarah's chest pulled tight. A feeling she couldn't name. Like recognition, but deeper, more visceral. The wolf took a step toward her. "Stay back," Sarah said, though her voice had no strength behind it, She was shaking violently now. From cold and shock and the adrenaline crash hitting her system, the wolf paused. Then, impossibly, it lowered itself to the ground, making itself smaller, less threatening. It watched her with those strange, intelligent eyes. "What are you?" Sarah breathed. Lightning flashed overhead, so close the thunder was instantaneous. The wolf's head snapped up, scanning the forest. When it looked back at her, something had changed in its expression. Urgency, maybe even concern. It moved closer, and Sarah was too exhausted to run anymore. She flinched when its massive head came near, expecting teeth. Instead, it gently grasped the back of her jacket in its jaws and began pulling her to her feet. "What are you doing?" Sarah stumbled upright, her legs barely holding her weight. The wolf released her jacket and moved ahead a few paces, then looked back, waiting. It wanted her to follow. Every rational part of Sarah's brain screamed that this was insane. You didn't follow a giant wolf through a storm-dark forest. You didn't trust something that could tear you apart with one bite. But those eyes, and the cold, was seeping into her bones now. Hypothermia, a very real threat. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself and took a shaky step forward. The wolf waited until she was beside it, then began moving through the trees, slow enough for her to keep pace. Whenever she stumbled, it paused. When she fell behind, it circled back. They walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Just when Sarah thought she might collapse, she saw it, light filtering through the trees. A cabin, small but sturdy, with smoke rising from its chimney. The wolf led her to the porch, and then, suddenly stopped. It turned to look at her one last time, and Sarah could have sworn she saw something human in that gaze. Something that made her chest ache with a longing she didn't understand. Then it turned and vanished into the forest. Sarah stood shivering on the porch, watching the trees where it had disappeared. She should go inside, get warm, figure out what to do next. But part of her wanted to follow, to chase after that strange, impossible connection she'd felt. Thunder rumbled overhead, breaking the spell. She turned to the cabin door and knocked, praying someone was home. Praying they were human. Praying she hadn't just stepped into something far more dangerous than a storm. The door opened, revealing a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with storm-gray hair still damp and those same impossible amber eyes. "You," Sarah whispered. His jaw tightened. "You need to come inside. Now." As he stepped aside to let her pass, Sarah saw scratches on his arm, still healing. The same scratches she'd seen on the gray wolf. She crossed the threshold anyway. Some mistakes, she was beginning to realize, were worth making. Chapter 2. Shadows and Secrets. The cabin was warm, almost stifling after the freezing rain. Sarah stood dripping on the hardwood floor, acutely aware of the mud trailing from her shoes, and the man watching her with an unreadable expression. Up close, he was even more imposing, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders that filled the doorway and a presence that seemed to consume all the oxygen in the room. "You're bleeding," he said, his voice rough, like he hadn't used it in a while. Sarah touched her cheek, and her fingers came away red. She hadn't even felt the cut. "It's nothing. Sit." It wasn't a request. He gestured toward a worn leather couch near the fireplace. "I should call someone." "My car, no signal out here." Storm took down the cell tower. He moved to a cabinet, pulling out a first aid kit with practiced efficiency. "And your car isn't going anywhere tonight. Radiator's probably cracked and the roads are flooding." Sarah's stomach dropped. "How do you know about my car?" He paused just for a heartbeat. "I heard it die. Sound carries in the forest." It was a reasonable explanation, so why didn't she believe him? She lowered herself onto the couch, watching as he approached with the first aid kit. He knelt before her, bringing those amber eyes level with hers, and Sarah's breath caught. This close, she could see flecks of gold in their depths. could smell pine and rain and something wild she couldn't name. "This might sting," he said, raising a cotton pad soaked in antiseptic. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. His hand was gentle as he cleaned the cut on her cheek, his touch impossibly warm against her cold skin. She studied his face. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw covered in dark stubble, a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He looked like he was in his early 30s, weathered by something more than just years. "What were you doing out there?" he asked, his focus on her wound. "Driving to Portland. Fresh start." The words came easier than expected. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe it was those eyes. "My GPS said this was faster." GPS doesn't know about Blackthorn Forest. He applied a butterfly bandage with surprising delicacy. "People get lost here. Sometimes they don't get found. Is that a threat?" His gaze snapped to hers. A warning. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackling fire and rain against the windows. Sarah knew she should be terrified, alone with a stranger who was somehow connected to the impossible thing she'd seen in the forest. But that pull she'd felt with the wolf was even stronger now, a magnetic force that made her want to lean closer instead of pulling away. "The wolf," she said quietly. "The one that saved me. Where did it go?" His jaw tightened. "Back to its territory. It had the same eyes as you. Lots of wolves in these woods." He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "You need dry clothes. There's a bathroom down the hall. Towels in the cabinet. I'll find you something to wear." Sarah watched him retreat to what she assumed was a bedroom, his movements tense, controlled. She stood on shaky legs and made her way to the bathroom, grateful for a moment alone to process. The bathroom was simple but clean, rustic wood walls, a clawfoot tub, and a mirror that showed her exactly how much of a mess she was. Her dark hair hung in tangled ropes, mascara smudged beneath her brown eyes, clothes plastered to her body. She looked like a drowned rat. She looked like someone who'd just run from her entire life. A knock at the door made her jump. "Clothes," the man's voice came through the wood. Sarah opened it a crack. He held out a folded stack, flannel shirt, sweatpants, thick socks, all far too large for her but warm and dry. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and that electric jolt ran through her again, stronger this time. He felt it too. She saw it in the way his eyes darkened, the way his hand lingered a fraction too long before he pulled away. "Thank you," Sarah managed. He nodded and disappeared back into the main room. Sarah locked the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. This was crazy, all of it. She should be demanding he call for help, insisting on leaving, protecting herself. Instead, she was stripping off her wet clothes and pulling on his shirt, breathing in that pine and wild scent that made her head spin. The shirt hung to her knees. The sweatpants required rolling up several times. She looked ridiculous, but at least she was warm. When she emerged, she found him standing at the window, staring out at the storm. He'd changed too, dry jeans and a dark Henley that emphasized the powerful lines of his body. Sarah noticed the scratches on his forearm again, red and angry against his tanned skin. "Did the other wolf do that?" she asked, his shoulders tensed. "Something like that. You should clean them. They could get infected. They'll heal. That's not how infections work." Sarah crossed to where he'd left the first aid kit, gathering supplies. "Sit down." "I'm fine. Sit. Down." She used the same commanding tone he'd used on her earlier. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe amusement. He moved to the couch and sat, extending his arm with obvious reluctance. Sarah knelt between his knees, the position intimate in a way that made her hyper-aware of every breath, every movement. She cleaned the scratches carefully, trying to ignore how his muscles tensed beneath her touch, how close he was, how badly she wanted to ask questions she had no right to ask. "What's your name?" she said instead. "Kale. Kale," she repeated, testing it. It fit him, strong, sharp. "I'm Sarah." "I know," her hand stilled. "How?" "Your wallet. It fell out of your jacket pocket. It was plausible. So why did it feel like a lie?" "Sarah," Kale said, and the way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. "What you saw tonight?" A wolf saved my life, she interrupted, meeting his eyes. A very large, very intelligent wolf that led me here. To you. Wolves are protective of their territory. That's not what that was. Sarah finished bandaging his arm but didn't move away. That was personal. Cale's hand came up slowly, cupping her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted his rough exterior. His thumb traced her cheekbone, just below the butterfly bandage he'd placed there. You should be running from me. Probably, Sarah whispered. Why aren't you making me leave? Because... He stopped himself, conflict warring in his expression. His hand dropped away and he stood abruptly, putting the couch between them. You'll stay tonight. Tomorrow, when the storm clears, I'll take you to town. Get your car towed, and then you forget you were ever here. Sarah stood too, frustration and confusion, and that inexplicable attraction churning inside her. That easy? That necessary. Cale's voice was rough. You can take the bed. I'll sleep out here. Cale, get some rest, Sarah. He turned away, effectively ending the conversation. Tomorrow you go back to your life. Your fresh start in Portland, and I go back to mine. Sarah wanted to argue, to demand answers, to understand why every instinct screamed that walking away from this man would be the worst mistake of her life. But exhaustion was crashing over her in waves, and her body was finally registering everything it had been through. She retreated to the bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. The bed was simple but comfortable, covered in a thick quilt that smelled like him. She climbed under the covers fully clothed, listening to the storm rage outside and the quiet movements of Cale in the other room. Sleep should have been impossible. But the moment her head hit the pillow, darkness claimed her, filled with dreams of amber eyes and silver fur and a howl that sounded like coming home. Chapter 3. Morning Light and Dark Truths. Sarah woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a disoriented moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The storm, the wolves, Kyle. She sat up, running her hands through her tangled hair. Her clothes from yesterday hung over a chair by the window, still damp. Through the closed door, she heard movement in the kitchen. The clink of dishes. Part of her wanted to stay in this room, avoid the inevitable awkwardness of morning after conversation with a man who was equal parts savior and enigma. But the stronger part, the part that had made her leave Chicago, that had always pushed her toward the truth even when it hurt, made her stand and face whatever came next. Cale stood at the stove, his back to her, flipping what looked like pancakes with easy competence. He'd showered. His dark hair was still damp, and he wore fresh clothes that emphasized the lean muscle of his frame. Morning light painted him in gold, and Sarah's breath caught at how beautiful he was in the simple domesticity of the moment. He turned, spatula in hand, and their eyes met. Something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe, or resignation. You're awake, he said unnecessarily. Is that surprise or disappointment? Sarah moved to the small kitchen table, accepting the vulnerability of still wearing his clothes, of looking like she'd been through a war. Neither. He plated the pancakes and set them on the table with butter and syrup. Coffee? Please. They sat across from each other, and the silence felt heavy with unspoken things. Sarah poured syrup over her pancakes, hyper-aware of his presence, of how his eyes tracked her movements. The storm passed, Cale said finally. Roads should be clear enough by noon. I can take you into Blackthorn Falls. Get a tow for your car. Blackthorn Falls. That's the nearest town? Only town for 50 miles. He took a sip of his coffee. Small, quiet, good mechanic though. Sarah cut into her pancake, buying time. Do you live out here alone? Yes, by choice. His jaw tightened. By necessity. That sounds lonely. It's safe. The word hung between them, loaded with meaning. Sarah set down her fork. Safe for who? You or everyone else. Cale's eyes snapped to hers, something wild flashing in their depths. What do you want me to say, Sarah? The truth. She leaned forward, her heart pounding. I know what I saw last night wasn't normal. That wolf was too big, too intelligent. And you... She gestured at the fading scratches on his arm. You have the same injuries it got fighting the other wolf. The same eyes. Lots of people have amber eyes. Don't. Sarah's voice came out sharper than intended. Don't insult my intelligence. I may not understand what you are, but I know you're connected to what happened. Cale stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He paced to the window, his shoulders rigid. You should eat. We need to leave soon. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me the truth. He spun to face her, and the intensity in his expression made her press back in her chair. The truth? The truth is you stumbled into something you can't understand, something dangerous, and the smartest thing you can do is get in your car and drive as far from here as possible. Why? Because I'm trying to protect you! The words echoed in the small cabin. Cale's hands were clenched into fists, his whole body tense like he was fighting something internal. Sarah saw the conflict written across his face, the desire to push her away warring with something deeper, something that pulled him toward her the same way she was pulled toward him. Protect me from what? Sarah asked softly. From you? From everything. His voice broke slightly. From this world, from my world, from what I am. Sarah stood slowly, moving around the table toward him. She should be afraid. Every logical part of her brain screamed that she was in danger, that she should run, but her heart, that traitorous organ, saw only a man tormented by secrets he was desperate to keep. What if I don't want to be protected? She said. You don't know what you're saying. Then tell me. Help me understand. Cale's laugh was bitter. You want understanding? Fine. He moved toward the door, grabbing a jacket. Come with me. Sarah followed him outside into the crisp morning air. The forest was transformed by daylight. Beautiful. Peaceful. No trace of the terror from last night. Cale led her to the tree line, then stopped, his back to her. My family has lived in these woods for generations, he began, his voice low. We're not like other people, Sarah. We're bound to this land, to the moon, to instincts that don't fit in your civilized world. What are you saying? He turned to face her, and she saw the pain in his eyes. I'm saying that the wolf you saw last night, the one that saved you, that was me. Not a pet, not a trained animal. Me. The words should have sounded insane, should have sent her running, but standing there in the morning light, watching him lay himself bare, Sarah felt a strange sense of rightness, like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. You're a werewolf, she said. Not a question. A statement. Cale flinched at the word, but nodded. Shifter, werewolf, monster. Take your pick. You saved my life. I also put it in danger just by being near you. He took a step back, creating distance. The wolf that attacked you, Darius, he's from a rival pack. If he knows you've been here, if he thinks you're connected to me, he'll use you to get to me. Sarah's mind raced, trying to process. Why would he want to get to you? Because I'm the alpha of the Blackthorn pack, and we've been at war for territory for over a decade. The way he said it, alpha, sent a shiver down her spine. It explained the commanding presence, the protective instincts, the barely controlled power she'd sensed from the moment they met. This is insane, she whispered. Yes, I should be running. Yes, but I'm not. Sarah looked up at him, at this impossible man with his impossible truth. Why am I not running, Cale? He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hand cupping her face with desperate gentleness. Because you feel it too. This pull, this connection. It's not normal, Sarah. It's not human. What is it? I don't know. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Sarah's breath hitched. But it's why I can't stay away from you, even knowing I should. It's why the moment I caught your scent on the wind last night, every instinct I have screamed to protect you, to claim you. The words should have terrified her. Instead, heat pooled in her stomach, desire mixing with something deeper, more primal. I'm supposed to leave, she said softly. Start over in Portland. Forget all of this. You should. What if I don't want to? Cale's eyes darkened. Then you're making a choice that will change your life forever. Because if you stay, if we explore what this is, there's no going back. My world doesn't let go easily. Sarah's heart pounded. This was crazy, all of it. But standing here with him, feeling more alive than she had in years, she realized something important. She'd spent her whole life playing it safe, doing what was expected, staying in her comfortable cage. And where had it gotten her? Miserable and alone, maybe it was time to be reckless. "I want to stay," she whispered. "At least for today. Help me understand." Cale's expression shifted, relief and concern, and something that looked like hunger. "Today," he agreed roughly. "But Sarah, you need to know what you're getting into. Then show me." His eyes flashed amber gold, and Sarah knew she'd just crossed a threshold. There was no going back now, and she wouldn't want to, even if she could. Chapter 4. Into the wild, Cale led her deeper into the forest, moving with a grace that was almost hypnotic. Sarah struggled to keep up, her city-bred legs unaccustomed to the terrain, but she refused to complain. Every few minutes he'd glance back at her, concern flickering across his features, before he'd slow his pace slightly. They walked in silence for 20 minutes, the only sounds the crunch of leaves beneath their feet and the distant call of birds. Sarah's mind whirled with questions, but she sensed Cale needed this quiet, this space to prepare for whatever he was about to show her. Finally, they emerged into a clearing. A stream cut through the center, its water crystal clear and rushing over smooth stones. The morning sun filtered through the canopy above, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced across the forest floor. "This is Packland," Cale said, his voice reverent. "The heart of Blackthorn territory. My ancestors have protected this place for over 200 years. Sarah turned slowly, taking it in. "It's beautiful. It's home." He moved to the stream's edge, crouching down to trail his fingers through the water. "This is where I was born, where my father was alpha before me, and his father before him. Where is your family now?" Pain shadowed his expression. "Gone. There was a challenge 3 years ago. Darius's father, the alpha of the Shadow Ridge Pack, he wanted to expand his territory. My father refused to surrender our land." Cale's jaw tightened. "The challenge was supposed to be between alphas, one-on-one, but Marcus, Darius's father, broke pack law. He brought reinforcements." Sarah's breath caught. "What happened?" "My father died. My mother too, she tried to intervene." Kyle stood, his fists clenched. "I was young, barely old enough to hold the alpha title. But the pack looked to me and I had to be strong. Had to lead them through the grief and rebuilding." Without thinking, Sarah closed the distance between them and took his hand. His fingers were warm, solid, and they tightened around hers like a lifeline. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "That's a terrible burden to carry alone. An alpha is never truly alone. I have my pack." But his voice betrayed the loneliness beneath the words. "How many are in your pack?" 17 now. We were 23 before the challenge." Kyle looked down at their joined hands, his thumb absently stroking her palm. "We're smaller than Shadow Ridge, but we're strong, loyal, and this land is worth protecting." Sarah wanted to ask more. About pack dynamics, about what it meant to be alpha, about the mechanics of shifting from human to wolf. But before she could speak, Cale tensed. "Someone's coming," he said, his voice dropping to a growl. Sarah heard nothing, but seconds later, a figure emerged from the trees on the opposite side of the clearing. A woman, tall and lean, with copper-red hair pulled back in a braid. She moved with the same predatory grace as Cale, and her green eyes assessed Sarah with open curiosity. "So the rumors are true," the woman said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "The big bad alpha brought home a stray." "Watch it, Lyra," Cale warned, but there was no real heat in his tone. Lyra crossed the clearing, stopping a respectful distance away. "Relax, I'm not here to cause trouble. Though the pack is buzzing, you know how rare it is for you to bring anyone to your cabin, let alone a human." "This is Sarah," Kyle said, his hand still holding hers. "Sarah, this is Lyra, my beta, second in command." Lyra's eyebrows shot up at the introduction, her gaze dropping to their joined hands. Well, well, this just got interesting. What do you want, Lyra?" Cale's patience was clearly wearing thin. Darius was spotted near the eastern border last night, with 3 of his wolves. Lyra's expression turned serious. "They're testing us, Cale. And after what happened in the storm. Her eyes flickered to Sarah meaningfully. Sarah's stomach dropped. He knows I'm here. Probably, Lyra confirmed. Scents carry, especially in the rain. If he caught your scent mixed with Cale's... She left the implications hanging. Cale released Sarah's hand and ran his fingers through his hair, frustration radiating off him in waves. Increase patrols on the eastern border. Double shifts if necessary. I want to know the moment any Shadow Ridge wolf crosses into our territory. Already done. Lyra hesitated, then added carefully. The pack wants to meet her. They're curious about the human who has our alpha so distracted. She's not... Cale stopped himself, jaw clenching. This isn't the time. When will be the time? Lyra challenged gently. If Darius thinks she matters to you, then she's already in danger. The pack should know who they might be protecting. Sarah's head spun. Wait, what? I don't need protecting. I'm nobody. Both Cale and Lyra turned to look at her. Identical expressions of disbelief on their faces. You spent the night in the Alpha's cabin, Lyra said slowly, like explaining something to a child. He saved you personally instead of sending patrol. He's holding your hand in sacred pack territory. Trust me, honey, you're not nobody anymore. Heat crept up Sarah's neck. I don't want to cause problems for your pack. Maybe I should just go... No. Cale's voice came out harsh, commanding. Both women looked at him in surprise. He cleared his throat, moderating his tone. No, you're not leaving. Not until we know it's safe. And when will that be? Sarah asked. You said yourself that Darius will use me against you. Then I'll make sure he can't. The alpha dominance in Cale's tone made Sarah's pulse quicken. Lyra, gather the inner circle. Tonight. They can meet Sarah properly. Lyra grinned. Now this should be entertaining. She nodded to Sarah. Nice to meet you, human. Welcome to the madness. Then she melted back into the forest as silently as she'd appeared. Sarah turned to Cale. Inner circle? My most trusted pack members. The ones who've been with me since the beginning. He moved closer, and Sarah had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I need you to understand something. In wolf hierarchy, the alpha's mate is sacred, protected above all others. I'm not your mate, Sarah said, though the words felt wrong on her tongue. No, Cale agreed quietly, but my wolf doesn't seem to understand that. From the moment I caught your scent, every instinct has been screaming that you're mine to protect, mine to keep. His hand came up to cup her face. It's why I can't think straight around you. Why every decision I'm making right now goes against my better judgment. Sarah's breath quickened. What are you saying? I'm saying that this connection between us, it might be something deeper than either of us realized. In wolf culture, there's a concept called a true mate, a bond that transcends logic, that links two souls together. His thumb traced her cheekbone. It's incredibly rare. Most wolves never find theirs. They choose partners, build relationships, but it's not the same. And you think we're... Sarah couldn't finish the sentence. I don't know, Cale admitted, but I know I've never felt anything like this. And if there's even a chance that you're my true mate, then hell yes, I'm going to protect you with everything I have. The weight of his words settled over her. This was bigger than attraction, bigger than chemistry. This was fate, destiny, something cosmic and terrifying and utterly beyond her control. I'm scared, Sarah whispered. Good, Cale said roughly. You should be, but I promise you this. I will never let anything hurt you. Even if it means going to war with Shadow Ridge. Even if it costs me everything. Sarah reached up to cover his hand with hers. That's what I'm afraid of. His smile was sad, beautiful. Then we're both terrified. Welcome to my world, Sarah. As they stood there in the sacred clearing, Sarah felt the last of her old life slipping away, replaced by something wild and dangerous, and impossibly right. Chapter 5. The Pack. Circle night fell quickly in the forest, and with it came a nervous energy that made Sarah's hands shake as she smoothed down the borrowed clothes. Cale had insisted she wear something of his, another flannel shirt, soft jeans that she had to roll at the ankles. They need to smell me on you, he'd explained. It tells them you're under my protection. Now, Standing at the edge of another clearing, this one larger, with a massive bonfire already crackling in its center. Sarah wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. "You don't have to do this," Cale said quietly beside her. He'd been giving her an out every hour since they'd returned to the cabin. "I can still take you to town, get you somewhere safe, and then what?" Sarah looked up at him, at the concern etched into his features. "Darius already knows about me. Running won't change that. It might make you less of a target, or it might make me an easier one." Sarah squared her shoulders. "Besides, I said I wanted to understand your world. That includes meeting your pack." Cale's expression softened with something that looked like pride. He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Stay close to me. Some of the pack, they're wary of outsiders, especially humans." "Comforting," Sarah muttered, but she tightened her grip on his hand. They entered the clearing together, and immediately, conversation stopped. Sarah felt the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes on her, assessing, curious, some openly hostile. The wolves gathered around the fire were diverse in age and appearance, but they all shared that same predatory grace that barely contained wildness that marked them as other. Lyra appeared from the shadows, a welcoming smile on her face. "About time. We were starting to think you'd chickened out." She gestured to the assembled group. "Everyone, this is Sarah. Sarah, this is everyone." A massive man with silver-streaked dark hair stepped forward. His presence was nearly as commanding as Cale's, and the scar that ran from his temple to his jaw spoke of battles survived. "I'm Garrett, Pack Enforcer." His voice was a rumble. "You're the human who's got our alpha tied in knots." "I wouldn't say tied in knots," Sarah started, but Garrett's booming laugh cut her off. "I like her. She's got spine." He nodded to Cale. "Better than the last one you brought around." Cale's jaw tightened. "There was no last one." "Oh, I'm sorry. Was Isabella just a figment of our collective imagination?" A woman with platinum blonde hair and cold blue eyes stepped into the firelight. She was stunning in a lethal sort of way, and the look she gave Sarah was pure ice. "Tell me, human, what makes you special? What could you possibly offer an alpha that one of his own kind couldn't?" The clearing went silent, tension crackling in the air. "Elena," Cale's voice held a warning. "Stand down. Why should I?" Elena moved closer, circling Sarah like a predator. "She's weak, human. She can't hunt, can't fight, can't even shift. She's a liability." Sarah's heart hammered, but she refused to show fear. "You're right. I can't do any of those things." She met Elena's gaze steadily. "But I'm still here. And unless Cale asks me to leave, I'm staying." Elena's eyes flashed gold, wolf pushing close to the surface. "You have no idea what you've walked into, little human. The war with Shadow Ridge isn't a game. Wolves die. And weak links get cut. That's enough." Cale's voice rang with alpha command, and every wolf in the clearing straightened instinctively, even Elena. "Sarah is under my protection. Anyone who challenges that challenges me. Is that clear?" Murmurs of "yes, alpha" rippled through the group. But Elena held his gaze for a long moment before finally dipping her head in submission. She retreated to the far side of the fire, but her hostile stare never left Sarah. "Don't mind Elena," a younger voice said. A girl who couldn't be more than 19 approached, her dark curls bouncing. "She's had a thing for Cale since forever. You being here is basically her worst nightmare." She extended a hand to Sarah. "I'm Maya, Omega of the Pack." Sarah shook her hand gratefully. "Omega? Newest member, bottom of the hierarchy. It means I get all the grunt work and none of the glory." Maya grinned. "But it also means I don't have to deal with all the political posturing. Come on, sit with me. Let the testosterone settle." Before Sarah could respond, Cale's hand tightened on hers. "She stays with me." Maya rolled her eyes. "Possessive much?" "Relax, Alpha. I'm not going to corrupt her. It's not you I'm worried about." Cale's eyes swept the clearing, lingering on Elena. "I'll be okay," Sarah said softly, surprising herself with the truth of it. "Go. Do whatever Alpha things you need to do. I can handle this." Kyle studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Stay in the light. Don't go into the trees alone." He squeezed her hand once before releasing it. then moved to join Garrett and Lyra on the opposite side of the fire. Maya immediately linked her arm through Sarah's, pulling her toward a log near the flames. "So you're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. I haven't decided which yet." "Probably both," Sarah admitted, watching Cale across the fire. Even surrounded by his pack, his eyes kept finding hers, checking, making sure she was okay. "He's different with you," Maya observed. "I've been with the pack for 2 years, and I've never seen him like this. Soft, almost human. Is that a bad thing? In this world? Maybe." Maya's expression turned serious. An alpha has to be strong, has to put the pack first always. Feelings make you vulnerable, and vulnerability gets people killed. Sarah's stomach twisted. "You think I'm making him weak?" "I think you're making him conflicted, which is just as dangerous." Maya turned to face her fully. "Look, I'm not trying to scare you off, but you need to understand what being with Cale means. It's not just about you and him. It's about 17 lives that depend on his leadership. If Darius sees a weakness, he'll exploit it. And right now, you look like a pretty big weakness." The words hit harder than Elena's hostility, because they came from a place of genuine concern. Sarah watched Cale, saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept one ear toward her, even while discussing pack business with his enforcers. "I don't want to be his weakness," Sarah said quietly. "Then you need to become his strength." Maya's voice was kind but firm. "Or you need to leave before the choice is made for you." Across the fire, Cale's head snapped up, his eyes locking on something beyond the clearing. Every wolf in the pack tensed simultaneously, a collective shift that made Sarah's pulse spike. "What is it?" she whispered. Maya's hand went to Sarah's arm, gripping tight. "Shadow Ridge. They're here." Cale was already moving towards Sarah, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Everyone, defensive positions. Now." The pack moved with military precision, forming a protective circle around the clearing. Cale reached Sarah and pulled her against his chest, one arm wrapped around her waist. "I thought you said this was Packland," Sarah said, trying to control the tremor in her voice. "It is." Cale's voice was a growl. "Which means this is a declaration of war." From the darkness beyond the firelight, yellow eyes appeared. 1 pair, then 3, then 6. Wolves emerged from the shadows, larger than natural wolves, moving with that same supernatural grace. And at their head, a massive black wolf that Sarah recognized immediately. Darius. He shifted as he entered the clearing, bones cracking and reforming with sickening efficiency until a man stood where the wolf had been. He was tall, muscular, with dark hair and those same predatory yellow eyes. And he was smiling. "Kyle," Darius said, his voice smooth as poison. "I hope we're not interrupting. I just came to meet your new pet." His eyes locked on Sarah, and the hunger in them made her blood run cold. Cale's arm tightened around her, his whole body vibrating with barely contained rage. "You have 10 seconds to get off my land before I rip out your throat." Darius's smile widened. So protective. She must be special. He took a step closer, and immediately Cale's pack bristled, ready to attack. "I wonder, how far would you go to keep her safe? What would you sacrifice? Your pride? Your territory?" His eyes gleamed. "Your pack? Get out." Each word from Cale was a threat, a promise. Darius held up his hands in mock surrender, still smiling that terrible smile. "We're leaving. For now." His gaze slid back to Sarah. "Enjoy your time with the alpha, little human. It won't last long." Then he shifted, and the Shadow Ridge wolves melted back into the darkness as suddenly as they'd appeared. The silence they left behind was deafening. Chapter 6. The Weight of Choices. The pack meeting dissolved quickly after Darius's departure, wolves dispersing to patrol routes and defensive positions with military efficiency. Only the inner circle remained. Garrett, Lyra, Maya, and Elena, who kept shooting poisonous glares at Sarah. Cale still hadn't released his hold on her, his body rigid with tension that hadn't dissipated even after the threat vanished. Sarah could feel his heartbeat against her back, racing far faster than it should. "He's escalating," Garrett said grimly, pacing the perimeter of the clearing. Crossing into our territory during a pack gathering? That's not just bold. That's a challenge he expects us to answer. Then we answer it, Elena snapped. We can't let him think we're weak. He doesn't think we're weak, Lyra countered. He thinks we're distracted. Her eyes flickered to Sarah meaningfully. Enough. Cale's voice cut through the brewing argument. Everyone back to patrol. Standard rotations. I want eyes on every border. Cale, Garrett started. That's an order. The finality in his tone left no room for discussion. One by one, the pack members shifted and disappeared into the forest. Elena was the last to leave, pausing to look at Kyle with something that might have been concern or accusation. Then she too was gone, leaving Sarah and Kyle alone in the firelight. He finally released her, putting distance between them as he ran both hands through his hair. The gesture was so human, so vulnerable, that Sarah's heart ached. Cale, you should have left when you had the chance. His voice was rough, broken. Now it's too late. He's marked you. In his mind, you're already part of this war. Sarah moved toward him, her earlier fear replaced by something fiercer. Stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. I'm not. He spun to face her, and the anguish in his expression stopped her cold. You heard what he said, what he implied. He'll use you against me, Sarah. He'll take you, hurt you, just to break me. So what are you saying? That I should run? Abandon you to face this alone? Yes, the word exploded from him, because the alternative is you getting caught in the crossfire of a war you don't understand. A war that will show you exactly how monstrous we can be. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. Kyle closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands gripping her arms. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. You think you've seen what I am? You haven't. You've seen me controlled, careful. But when I fight, when my wolf takes over completely, I'm not the man standing here right now. I'm a predator. I kill without hesitation, without mercy. Sarah held his gaze, refusing to flinch. Show me. What? Your wolf. Let me see the part of you that you're so afraid will scare me away. She reached up to cup his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. If we're doing this, if I'm really your mate or whatever this connection is, then I need to see all of you. Not just the human parts you think I can handle. Cale's eyes searched hers for a long moment. Then slowly he stepped back. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. Sarah's voice was steady despite the fear thrumming through her veins. I'm asking you to trust me the way you're asking me to trust you. Something shifted in his expression, resignation mixed with hope. He moved to the center of the clearing, and Sarah could see him fighting some internal battle. Then his eyes flashed amber gold, and he nodded. Don't run, he said quietly. No matter what you feel, don't run. Running triggers the prey drive. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, partly for comfort, partly to keep from reaching for him. I won't run. Kyle began to shift. It wasn't like in the movies, smooth and magical. This was visceral, primal. Bones cracked and reformed with sounds that made Sarah's stomach turn. His body contorted, muscles rippling and reshaping, fur sprouted across his skin in waves. His face elongated into a muzzle, teeth sharpening into fangs. And then, where a man had stood, there was a wolf, massive, powerful. The gray coat she remembered from that first night. But now she could see the silver markings along his shoulders, the way his fur caught the firelight like moonlight on water. He was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The wolf, Cale, watched her with those same amber eyes, intelligent, aware, waiting for her reaction. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to back away, to put distance between herself and the apex predator mere feet away. But she'd made a promise. More than that, she'd made a choice. She took a step forward. The wolf's ears perked up, surprised. Another step. Then another. Until she was close enough to reach out and touch him. Can I? She whispered. The wolf lowered his head slightly. Permission. Sarah's hand trembled as she extended it, her fingers finally making contact with his fur. It was softer than she'd expected, thick and warm. The wolf stood perfectly still, letting her explore, letting her adjust to this reality of what he was. "You're beautiful," Sarah breathed, wonder replacing her fear. She ran her hand along his neck, feeling the powerful muscles beneath. "Terrifying, but beautiful." The wolf made a sound, not quite a growl, but a low rumble that vibrated through his chest. Then, carefully, he pressed his massive head against her chest, a gesture that was pure Kale despite the form. Sarah wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur. She felt the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his body, and something inside her clicked into place. This wasn't a monster. This was still Kale, just more. "I'm not running," she murmured against his fur. "I'm not leaving you." The wolf pulled back to look at her, and in those amber eyes, Sarah saw such raw emotion that tears sprang to her own. Hope, relief, and something deeper, something that looked like love. Then he was shifting again, bones cracking back into human form, until Kale knelt before her in the firelight, breathing hard. His hands came up to cup her face, his expression fierce. "Sarah, I see you," she interrupted, her own hands covering his. "I see all of you, and I'm still here. I don't deserve you. That's not your choice to make." Kyle pulled her down into his arms, holding her like she was the only thing anchoring him to earth. They stayed like that for a long moment, the fire crackling beside them, the forest alive with night sounds around them. Finally, Kale spoke, his voice muffled against her hair. "If you stay, there's no going back. Darius won't stop. The pack will expect things from you. Your whole life will change." "My life already changed the moment I met you," Sarah said. "The question isn't whether I want this. The question is whether you're willing to let me in completely. No more protecting me from the truth. No more trying to make decisions for me." Kale pulled back to look at her, searching her face. "You're asking me to go against every instinct I have." "I know." Sarah managed a small smile. "But if we're going to survive what's coming, we need to be partners, equals, not protector and protected." "You're human. You can't fight like you?" "You're right, but I can think, I can strategize. I spent 3 years working crisis management at a nonprofit, dealing with hostile takeovers and political maneuvering." She met his eyes steadily. "You need strength and claws? You have your pack. But maybe you also need someone who can see angles you can't. Someone who isn't bound by pack law and instinct." Kyle stared at her like she'd just revealed she could fly. "You're serious?" "Completely." Sarah took his hands in hers. "Let me help you, Kale. Let me be part of this fight instead of just a liability to protect." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed him, made him look younger, less burdened. "My pack is going to think you've bewitched me," he said. "Maybe I have." Sarah grinned. "Is that a yes?" Instead of answering, Kale pulled her into a kiss, fierce, claiming, full of everything they hadn't yet said aloud. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "Yes," he whispered. "God help us both, yes." Chapter 7. Blood and Bond Sarah woke to an empty bed and cold morning light streaming through the cabin windows. She sat up, disoriented, her lips still tingling from last night's kiss. After returning from the clearing, Kale had insisted she take the bed again while he kept watch. She'd fallen asleep to the sound of him moving through the cabin, restless, alert. Now, voices drifted from outside, low, urgent. She recognized Kale's rumble and Garrett's deeper bass. Sarah dressed quickly in her now dry clothes and found them on the porch. Garrett's face was grim, and Kale's expression was darker than she'd ever seen it. "What's happened?" she asked. Kale turned, and something in his eyes made her stomach drop. "Shadow Ridge attacked the Eastern Border Patrol 2 hours ago. Is everyone—" "One injured. Marcus." Kale's jaw clenched. "He'll survive, but he's in bad shape. Elena's with him now." Garrett ran a hand over his scarred face. "It was a coordinated ambush. They were waiting for our patrol, which means they know our routes." Cale finished. Someone's feeding them information. The implication hung heavy in the air. A traitor. Someone in the pack was betraying them to Shadow Ridge. I need to see Marcus, Cale said, and then we're calling a full pack meeting. Everyone accounts for their whereabouts during the attack. Cale, if word gets out that you're questioning pack loyalty, Garrett started, then it gets out. I won't have my wolves walking into ambushes because someone's selling us out. Cale's voice was pure alpha command. Then his eyes found Sarah. You should stay here. This could get ugly. No. Sarah stepped forward. You said we're partners. That means I'm part of this. Sarah, a pack tribunal isn't... I'm coming. She held his gaze steadily. Besides, sometimes an outsider sees things people on the inside miss. Garrett raised an eyebrow at Cale, a hint of amusement breaking through his grim expression. She's got you there, Alpha. Cale looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. Stay close to me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They drove to what Garrett called the Den, a large rustic lodge deeper in the forest that served as pack headquarters. Wolves were already gathering, tension crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. Sarah felt their eyes on her as she entered beside Cale, felt their suspicion and curiosity. Elena was there, her hands covered in blood as she tended to Marcus, a young man with sandy hair who lay on a makeshift medical table, his torso wrapped in bandages. He was pale but conscious, his face tight with pain. Report, Cale commanded, moving to Marcus's side. 6 Shadow Ridge wolves, Marcus said through gritted teeth. They were waiting at the creek crossing. We didn't stand a chance. He paused, struggling to breathe. They knew exactly when we'd be there, Alpha. Down to the minute. Murmurs rippled through the assembled pack. Lyra appeared at Cale's shoulder, her face troubled. I've accounted for everyone's positions during the attack. Everyone has alibis except... She hesitated. Except? Cale pressed. Except Thomas. He was supposed to be on Western Patrol, but no one can confirm his position. A lean wolf with shaggy brown hair stepped forward, his face flushed. I was where I was supposed to be. Just because no one saw me doesn't mean I wasn't there. Then where were you exactly? Garrett demanded. The Western Ridge like always. Alone because that's how patrol works. Convenient, Elena spat, her eyes flashing gold. You're the newest member besides Maya. You barely know us. Maybe Shadow Ridge made you a better offer. I would never... Thomas looked desperately at Cale. Alpha, you have to believe me. I'm loyal to this pack. Sarah watched the exchange carefully, her crisis management training kicking in. Something wasn't adding up. Thomas seemed genuinely panicked, not like someone who'd been caught. And Elena was pushing too hard, too fast. Kyle, Sarah said quietly, touching his arm. Every eye in the room turned to her. She felt the weight of their attention, their resentment at the human daring to speak. With respect, she continued, addressing the room. Accusing Thomas based on lack of alibi isn't evidence. It's circumstantial at best. And what would you know about it, human? Elena sneered. This is pack business. It's tactical business, Sarah countered calmly. And I know something about identifying security breaches. If Shadow Ridge knew your patrol schedule down to the minute, they'd need more than just Thomas's word. They'd need someone with access to your full rotation schedules, communication protocols, someone in leadership. The temperature in the room dropped. Wolves exchanged glances, suddenly wary. Garrett spoke first. She's right. The rotation schedules are only accessible to inner circle members. Lyra, myself, Elena... Are you accusing me? Elena's voice was deadly quiet. I'm saying we need to think logically, Sarah said, keeping her tone even despite her racing heart. Who benefits most from Cale appearing weak? From creating division in the pack? Shadow Ridge, Lyra said slowly. They benefit from us turning on each other. Exactly. Sarah looked at Cale. This could be a setup. Attack the border. Make it look like you have inside information. Then sit back and watch the pack tear itself apart looking for a traitor who might not exist. Cale studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Everyone stands down. No accusations without concrete evidence. He turned to Thomas. You're not banished, but you're under observation. Garrett, I want you personally overseeing his patrols. Yes, Alpha. As for the rotation schedules, we change them immediately. New routes, new times, and the information stays with me only. No one else knows the full picture. That's not how we've operated before, Elena protested. The inner circle will adapt. Kale's tone left no room for argument. Until we know for certain how Shadow Ridge is getting their intelligence, we assume everyone's compromised and act accordingly. The pack dispersed slowly, wolves murmuring among themselves. Sarah felt Elena's burning glare but ignored it, following Kyle to a private room at the back of the lodge. Once alone, Kyle turned to her, something like awe in his expression. You just prevented a potential civil war in my pack. I just pointed out the obvious, Sarah said, though her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Did I overstep? I know I'm not pack. Kyle pulled her into his arms, cutting off her words. You were brilliant. And you were right. I was so focused on finding the betrayer that I didn't consider we were playing into Darius's hands. Sarah leaned into him, breathing in his scent. Pine and smoke and something uniquely him. So what now? Now we set a trap. Cale pulled back to look at her, a dangerous glint in his eyes. If Darius thinks he can manipulate us, it's time we returned the favor. What did you have in mind? We feed different information to different wolves. See which version gets back to Shadow Ridge. He traced her jawline with his thumb, and we use their expectations against them. They think you make me weak. We'll make them believe it. Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. You want to use me as bait. I want to use us as bait, Cale corrected. Make them think I'm so distracted by you that I'm vulnerable. Draw them out into an attack we're actually prepared for. That's risky. Everything about this is risky. His hand slid to the back of her neck, pulling her closer. But if we do this right, we end this war before more of my pack gets hurt. Sarah's pulse quickened, and not entirely from fear. When? 3 nights from now. Full moon. Cale's eyes held hers. In wolf culture, full moon challenges are sacred. Binding. If I defeat Darius under the full moon, he has to honor the outcome. His pack will have to stand down. And if you lose, I won't. The absolute certainty in his voice should have been arrogant, but it wasn't. It was simply truth. But Sarah, you need to understand, this kind of challenge is to the death. One of us won't walk away. The weight of that settled over her. In 3 days, the man she was falling for would fight to the death, and she would have to watch, helpless to intervene. Then we'd better make sure you win, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Cale's smile was fierce, proud. Have I mentioned that you're extraordinary? Not nearly enough. Sarah rose on her toes to kiss him, pouring everything she couldn't yet say into the contact. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered against his lips. 3 days. We can do this. 3 days, he agreed, but his arms tightened around her, as if already dreading the moment he'd have to let her go. Chapter 8. The Calm. 2 days before the full moon, and the forest felt different. Heavier. Like the trees themselves knew what was coming. Sarah stood in the clearing behind Cale's cabin, watching him move through what he called combat forms, a fluid series of movements that were part martial arts, part something ancient and primal. Sweat glistened on his bare chest despite the cool morning air, muscles rippling with each controlled strike and defensive block. She should be afraid. In 48 hours, this man would face a fight to the death, and there was nothing she could do but watch. But fear had given way to something else, a fierce, protective rage that surprised her with its intensity. You're thinking too loud, Cale said without breaking his rhythm. I can practically hear your thoughts from here. Is that a wolf thing? It's a you thing. He finished the sequence and turned to face her, chest heaving. You get this look when you're worried. Your eyebrows do this thing. He mimicked a furrow. Despite everything, Sarah smiled. My eyebrows are none of your business. Everything about you is my business now. Kyle closed the distance between them, cupping her face with hands that were gentle despite their strength. Talk to me. What's going on in that brilliant mind? I keep thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if the trap fails? What if Darius brings more wolves than expected? What if— her voice cracked. What if I lose you before I ever really had you? Cale's expression softened. Come here. He led her to a fallen log at the clearing's edge and pulled her down beside him, keeping her hand in his. I need to tell you something about the bond between us. Sarah's heart stuttered. What about it? I've been feeling it since the moment I first caught your scent. This pull, this certainty. But I didn't want to say anything because it felt like too much, too fast. He turned to look at her, vulnerability raw in his amber eyes. True mates, it's not just some romantic notion. It's real, a soul-deep connection that happens once in a lifetime if you're lucky enough to find them at all. And you think I'm yours? Sarah whispered. I know you are. Cale brought her hand to his chest, pressing it over his heart. My wolf recognized you immediately. Every instinct I have screams to protect you, claim you, keep you safe. But it's more than instinct, Sarah. It's you. Your courage, your brilliance, the way you face down my pack without flinching. The way you see me, all of me, and don't run. Tears burned behind Sarah's eyes. I feel it too. This connection, like I've known you forever even though it's only been days. That's the bond. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But here's the thing about true mates. The bond can be completed, sealed. It requires a mark. A mark? Cale gestured to the junction between his neck and shoulder. Here, it's a claiming bite. In wolf culture, it binds two souls together permanently. You'd be mine, and I'd be yours. The pack would have to accept you as their alpha's mate. You'd have protection, status, but also— he hesitated. Also obligation, responsibility. You'd be bound to me to this pack forever. Sarah's mind raced. Forever. No more dreams of Portland, of starting fresh somewhere new. But looking at Cale, feeling the rightness of his presence beside her, those dreams felt like echoes of someone else's life. Would I become like you? A shifter? No, the bite doesn't turn humans. But it would link us. You'd feel what I feel, sense when I'm in danger, and I'd feel you, always. His jaw tightened. It's a lot to ask. Too much, probably. And the timing, right before a death match, is terrible. Why are you telling me this now? Cale's eyes met hers, and the pain in them made her chest ache. Because if something happens to me tomorrow night, I need you to know what you mean to me. That you're not just some human I'm protecting. You're my mate, my other half. And if I had more time, if circumstances were different, I'd court you properly. Give you the choice without the pressure of a war hanging over us. Cale. But I also need to be honest about what the bond means. If I mark you before the challenge and I fall, you'll feel it. The pain, the loss. It could break you. His voice roughened. That's why I haven't asked. Why I won't ask. I won't risk destroying you. Sarah pulled her hand free and stood, pacing away from him. Her emotions were a tangled mess. Love and fear and frustration all warring for dominance. She'd known him for less than a week, and yet the thought of losing him felt like it would tear her apart, even without a mystical bond. You're making decisions for me again, she said finally, turning to face him. Cale stood too, tension in every line of his body. I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to control the outcome. To minimize damage. Sarah moved back to him, tilting her head up to meet his gaze. But you don't get to decide what I can handle. You don't get to choose whether I'm strong enough to survive losing you. Sarah, if you die tomorrow night, with or without this bond, it's going to destroy me anyway. Her voice broke, but she pushed through. At least with the bond, I'd have had the chance to truly be yours. To give you that certainty before you walk into that fight. Cale stared at her, something like awe dawning in his expression. You're saying you want the mark. I'm saying I want you. All of you. Forever. Sarah reached up to trace the spot he'd indicated on his neck. And if that means binding myself to you, and this pack, and this crazy supernatural world, then that's what I want. You don't know what you're agreeing to. The bond is permanent, Sarah. Even death doesn't break it completely. Good. She pressed closer, feeling his heart thunder against her chest. Because I'm not planning on letting you die. And if you do, I want to carry part of you with me always. Kale's control snapped. He pulled her against him, kissing her with a desperate hunger that stole her breath. When he finally pulled back, his eyes had gone wolf gold, his breathing ragged. Are you sure? He asked hoarsely. Once I mark you, that's it. You'll be mine in every way that matters. I'm sure. Sarah tilted her head, exposing the vulnerable column of her throat. Make me yours, Cale. Give us both something to fight for. For a moment, he just looked at her, memorizing her face, her trust, the gift she was offering. Then slowly, reverently, he lowered his head to her neck. This will hurt, he warned, his lips brushing her skin. I know. His teeth grazed the junction of her neck and shoulder, and Sarah felt the sharp prick of fangs, then pressure, pain, and a flood of sensation that was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. It was as if a door had been thrown open inside her chest. And Cale's presence poured through. His emotions, his essence. The fierce protective love he'd been holding back. The pain faded, replaced by warmth that spread through her entire body. She gasped, gripping his shoulders as the bond clicked into place with an almost audible snap. Kyle drew back, licking the wound to seal it, his eyes blazing gold. Sarah, he breathed wonder in his voice. I can feel you. God, I can feel everything. She could feel him too. His awe, his love, his fear for the coming fight. It was overwhelming and perfect and terrifying all at once. Together, she whispered, touching the fresh mark on her neck. Whatever happens, we face it together. Cale pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. Through the bond, Sarah felt his relief, his gratitude, and beneath it all, his determination. He wouldn't lose. He couldn't. Not now that he had everything to fight for. Behind them, a twig snapped. They broke apart to find Maya standing at the clearing's edge, her eyes wide. Cale, you need to come quick. Darius sent a messenger. He's moved the challenge up. What? Cale's voice was a growl. When? Maya's face was pale. Tonight. At moonrise. He says if you don't show, he'll consider it a forfeit and attack the pack directly. The bottom dropped out of Sarah's stomach. Tonight. They were out of time. Chapter 9. Blood Moon Rising. The challenge ground was ancient. A natural amphitheater carved into the hillside where pack challenges had been held for generations. Stone pillars ringed the clearing, covered in symbols Sarah didn't understand. The Blackthorn pack assembled on one side, Shadow Ridge on the other, tension crackling between them like lightning. Sarah stood with Lyra and Garrett, feeling horribly exposed despite being surrounded by Cale's wolves. Through the bond, she felt his presence even though he was across the clearing, speaking with his inner circle, his determination, his focus, and underneath it all, a current of fear, not for himself, but for her. I'm okay, she thought, not knowing if he could hear. His head turned slightly, amber eyes finding hers across the distance. Warmth flooded the bond, acknowledgement. He'd heard her. The mark is fresh, Lyra observed quietly, her eyes on Sarah's neck. He claimed you. I asked him to, Sarah said, lifting her chin. Lyra studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good, he needed that. Something to anchor him. She paused. You know what happens if he loses? He won't lose. But if he does, then I'll feel it through the bond. I know. Sarah's hand drifted to the mark on her neck. And I'll live with it. But I won't watch him go into this fight thinking he has nothing to come back to. Garrett grunted approvingly. You're tougher than you look, human. Sarah, she corrected. My name is Sarah. Sarah, Garrett amended with something that might have been respect. Movement across the clearing drew their attention. Darius emerged from the Shadow Ridge ranks, flanked by 6 large wolves. In human form he was imposing, all hard muscle and cold calculation. His yellow eyes found Sarah immediately, and his smile was predatory. So the little human is still here, he called out, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. And freshly marked, I see. How romantic. Cale always did have a flair for the dramatic. Cale stepped forward into the center of the challenge ground, and the change in him was immediate. This wasn't the man who'd held her so gently this morning. This was the alpha, commanding, dangerous, barely contained violence wrapped in human skin. "You wanted this challenge, Darius," Cale said, his voice ringing with authority. "Here I am. Let's end this." "End it? Oh, we're just beginning." Darius moved to the opposite side of the circle. "You see, the old rules said challenges were to submission. First blood. But I'm proposing we update the terms." His smile widened. "To the death. Winner takes both territories and both packs." Gasps rippled through both groups. Even Darius's own wolves looked surprised by the escalation. "You're insane," Lyra called out. "That's not how I accept," Cale interrupted, silencing her protest. Sarah's heart stopped. Through the bond, she felt his cold fury, his absolute conviction. "What are you doing?" she thought desperately. "Trust me," came his response through the bond, clear as spoken words. "Excellent," Darius purred. "Then let's make it official." He looked to an elderly wolf who stood between the two packs. The arbiter, Sarah realized. The neutral party who would witness and enforce the challenge rules. The arbiter, a woman with silver hair and ancient eyes, stepped forward. "A challenge to the death under the full moon. The terms are set. Both alphas agree?" "I agree," Darius said. "I agree," Cale confirmed. "Then by the old laws, let the challenge begin." Both alphas began to shift. Sarah had seen Cale transform before, but never like this. Not with the moon rising behind him and power radiating from every pore. The shift was faster, more fluid, and when he stood in wolf form, he was magnificent. Silver-gray fur, massive shoulders, those amber eyes burning with intelligence and fury. Darius's wolf was larger, all black with those eerie yellow eyes. He circled Kyle slowly, looking for weakness. Then they collided with a force that shook the ground. Sarah had never seen violence like this. It was brutal, primal, a dance of death executed with terrifying precision. They moved too fast for her human eyes to fully track, a blur of fur and fangs and blood. The sound alone was horrible. Snarls and the crunch of teeth on flesh. Through the bond, Sarah felt flashes of Cale's experience. The burn of claws raking his side, the satisfaction of his teeth finding purchase on Darius's shoulder, the constant calculation, where to strike, how to defend, when to press the advantage. "Breathe," she thought at him, not knowing if it would help. "I'm here. I'm with you." A surge of strength came through the bond, her support fueling him. The fight raged on. Minutes felt like hours. Both wolves were bleeding now, their movements becoming more labored. Sarah's nails bit into her palms as she fought not to scream, not to run into the circle and interfere. Darius lunged for Cale's throat, the killing blow. But Cale twisted impossibly fast, using Darius's momentum against him. He caught the black wolf's leg in his jaws and wrenched, the snap of bone audible across the clearing. Darius went down with a howl of pain. Cale was on him immediately, jaws clamped around his throat. One twist and it would be over, but Cale held there, pressure without the killing bite. Giving Darius a choice. "Submit," the arbiter called, "or die. Choose, Alpha." For a long moment nothing happened. Then Darius shifted back to human form, Cale's teeth still at his throat. "I submit," he rasped, the words clearly bitter. Cale released him and stepped back, shifting back to human form. He was covered in wounds, blood streaming from dozens of cuts, but he stood tall, victorious. "By the old laws, I claim both territories," Cale declared, his voice carrying despite his exhaustion. "But I'm not interested in conquering Shadow Ridge wolves. You can join my pack willingly, or leave these lands peacefully." "You have 3 days to decide," shocked silence met his words. Sarah felt his pack's confusion through the bond. This wasn't traditional. Winners took everything, but Cale was offering mercy, choice. "You're weak," Darius spat, clutching his broken leg. "That compassion will destroy you." "No," Cale said quietly. "It'll save us all from becoming what you are." He turned away from Darius, his eyes finding Sarah across the crowd. The bond sang between them, relief, love, exhaustion. She was running before she realized it, crossing the challenge ground and throwing herself into his arms. "You're hurt," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm alive, he corrected, holding her close despite his injuries. We're alive. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen. Cale laughed, the sound rough but genuine. Get used to it. You're mated to an alpha. Stupid and brave kind of comes with the territory. Garrett approached, followed by Lyra and several pack members. That was unexpected, Alpha. Offering them a choice. We've been at war for too long, Kyle said, still holding Sarah. It's time to try something different. Some of the Shadow Ridge wolves are asking to speak with you, Lyra reported. They want to join Blackthorn. They're tired of Darius's leadership. Then we'll hear them out. Tomorrow. Cale swayed slightly, and Sarah tightened her grip on him. You need medical attention, she said firmly. I need you, he corrected, but allowed her to guide him toward Garrett's truck. As they left the challenge ground, Sarah felt eyes on them. She turned to see Elena standing at the edge of the crowd, her expression complex, jealousy mixed with something that might have been grudging respect. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adjustments. But tonight, Cale was alive. They'd survived. And through the bond, Sarah felt his love wrapping around her like a promise. Fierce, protective, and absolutely unshakable. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Alpha and mate, wolf and human, two halves of an impossible whole. The moon rose full and bright above them, bearing witness to the new era they'd just begun. Chapter 10. New Beginnings. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the den's main hall, watching wolves from both packs mingle with cautious curiosity. The integration wasn't seamless. Old wounds didn't heal overnight. But it was happening. Small conversations, shared patrols, the tentative building of trust. Penny for your thoughts? Kyle's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. The bond hummed contentedly between them, a constant warm presence she'd grown to depend on. Just thinking about how much has changed, Sarah said, leaning back into his warmth. A month ago, I was driving to Portland to start over. Now you're the Alpha's mate, mediating disputes between formerly hostile packs and reorganizing our entire communication system. He pressed a kiss to her marked neck, making her shiver. How's that working out for you? Exhausting, terrifying, perfect. She turned in his arms to face him. The wounds from the challenge had healed, leaving only faint scars that somehow made him more beautiful. Though I could do without Elena glaring at me every 5 minutes. As if summoned, Elena appeared across the hall, her expression neutral but no longer openly hostile. She'd been the first Shadow Ridge wolf to formally request joining Blackthorn, surprising everyone. Through Lyra, Sarah had learned that Elena respected strength above all else, and Sarah standing by Cale through the challenge had earned a measure of that respect. She's coming around, Cale murmured. Give it time. We're giving a lot of things time. Sarah gestured to the room. This whole experiment, merging two packs who've been enemies for years. It's working because of you. Cale's hand cupped her face. Your idea to have mixed patrols, to rotate leadership responsibilities, to actually talk through disputes instead of defaulting to hierarchy. It's revolutionary. It's basic conflict resolution. In the wolf world, it's revolutionary. He smiled that rare, full smile that still made her heart skip. My very human mate is teaching ancient wolves new tricks. How's that going over with the traditionalists? Garrett thinks you're brilliant. Lyra wants to make you official pack advisor. And Marcus... Cale's expression darkened slightly. Marcus is still recovering, but he's grateful. He knows you probably saved Thomas from being banished. The traitor hunt had concluded a week ago. There had been no traitor, just Darius's calculated manipulation and a lucky guess about patrol patterns. Thomas had been fully reinstated, though he still walked with a cloud of suspicion following him that would take time to dissipate. Speaking of Thomas, Sarah said, He's been volunteering to help Maya with the younger wolves, building trust through action. You counseled him on that, didn't you? Maybe. Sarah smiled. He needed to prove his loyalty, but not through violence or dominance. Service works better. Kyle shook his head in wonder. What did I do to deserve you? You saved my life in a storm. Then you showed me a world I never knew existed. Sarah's fingers traced the line of his jaw. And you trusted me enough to let me be part of it, not just an observer. Best decision I ever made. He kissed her softly, and the bond flared with love so intense it took her breath away. A throat cleared behind them. They broke apart to find Maya grinning, a small child clinging to her leg. Sorry to interrupt the Alpha Love Fest, but we have a situation. The child, a girl no more than 5, peeked out from behind Maya's leg. Her eyes were wide and amber, marking her as a wolf pup. This is Lily, Maya explained. She's from Shadow Ridge. Her parents are among the wolves who chose to leave rather than join Blackthorn. But Lily... Maya's expression turned sad. She imprinted on our territory. She doesn't want to leave. Imprinting. Sarah had learned about it in her crash course on wolf culture, a rare occurrence where a young wolf bonded so strongly to a place that leaving would cause psychological harm. Kyle knelt before the child, making himself less intimidating. Hello, Lily, I'm Kale. You're the Alpha, the child whispered. The one who won. Are you going to make me leave? Do you want to leave? Lily shook her head vehemently. I like it here. The forest feels right. And Maya teaches us games, and there's the creek and... Tears welled in her eyes. Please don't make me go. Sarah's heart broke. Through the bond, she felt Kale's conflict. Pack law said children stayed with their parents, but imprinting was sacred, undeniable. What do your parents want? Kale asked gently. They're scared, Lily admitted. They don't trust the merge. But they said if I really need to stay, they'd consider it. An idea formed in Sarah's mind. What if we offered them a trial period? She suggested. They stay for, say, 3 months. Get to know the pack. See that we're not a threat. If after that time they still want to leave, we help them relocate. But if they choose to stay, Lily gets to be where she belongs. Maya's eyes lit up. That could work. Give them time without pressure. Kale looked at Sarah with such love and pride that the bond practically sang. What do you think, Lily? Does that sound fair? The child nodded eagerly. Can I keep learning games with Maya? Absolutely, Kale confirmed. He stood and addressed Maya. Set up a meeting with Lily's parents. We'll make this work. As Maya led the child away, Sarah felt a surge of accomplishment. This was what the merge could be. Not forced compliance, but genuine integration. Wolves choosing to stay because they wanted to, not because they had to. You're doing it again, Kale murmured. Doing what? That thing where you find solutions I'd never think of. He pulled her close. In the old days, I'd have just declared imprinting law absolute, and that would be that. But your way, giving them choice, time, respect, it's better. We make a good team. We make a perfect team. Kyle's expression turned serious. Sarah, there's something I need to ask you. Something I should have asked before. But everything was so chaotic. Sarah's pulse quickened. What is it? Stay with me. Not just for now. Not just until things settle down. Stay forever. His hands framed her face. I know you had plans. Portland. A fresh start. And this life. It's not what you signed up for. But I'm asking you to choose this. Choose me. Choose us. Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. Kale, I chose you the moment I accepted your mark. I chose this life when I stood by you at the challenge. Did you really think I'd leave? I thought. Maybe once the danger passed, you'd want your old life back. Your freedom. This is my freedom, Sarah said fiercely. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. With you. With this pack. Building something that matters. She kissed him, pouring everything she felt through the bond and the contact. I'm not going anywhere, Alpha. You're stuck with me. Kale's laugh was joy and relief mixed together. Thank God, because I don't know how to do this without you anymore. Good thing you'll never have to find out. They stood together in the heart of the den, surrounded by the pack they were building together, not through dominance or fear, but through trust and choice. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly, wild and beautiful and home. Sarah had left Chicago looking for a fresh start. Instead, she'd found a destiny she never could have imagined. And standing in Kyle's arms, feeling the bond pulse between them and the pack's energy surrounding them, she knew she'd finally found where she belonged, not in a city, not in a carefully planned future, but here, in the wild spaces between worlds, with a wolf who'd taught her that the strongest love was the one you chose, fought for, and built together. Day by impossible day, the moon rose outside, the windows, full and bright, blessing them with its ancient light, and in its glow, a new pack, stronger, wiser, more compassionate than the sum of its parts, began to truly come alive. This was just the beginning.